Hello and welcome back for another episode of Financial Freedom by 40. In this week's episode, we make our way a little bit further down the coast to Sydney and we spend some time exploring all of the sights and sounds that Sydney has to offer. But we started our week with a visit to yet another chocolate and lolly factory where the boys got to make their very own chocolate bars, which was super exciting. What do you guys got there? Is that a whole mix of lolly?
Yes.
Show me. Oh, yum. Look at that. And you?
Tin Pan, Skittles, raspberries, jelly beans.
Oh, look at that, Saves. Very beautiful. Very creative. The chocolate factory does offer tours where you can go along and see them making all of the chocolates and marshmallows and yummy things that they make there. But we decided not to do the tour and just opt for the chocolate making experience for the boys. And here are their finished chocolate bars. All right, so let's see these chocolate bars, boys.
It's open the top other end, Colin, isn't it?
We've just been to the factory, chocolate factory, where the boys have made their own chocolate bars. It was $12, no, $16 each to make a chocolate bar, 240 gram chocolate bar. And here's what we got. And they're going to sample them. Can you carefully open it so you don't make a big mess? Oh look, they're nicely packaged.
Do the plastic cupping?
No, I don't.
You just got to break a piece off. Oh. Okay.
It's melting.
You just break a piece off and then put the rest back in the bag.
Can you pass me a knife?
Maybe Ollie try and not pull yours the whole way out of the bag,
How
honey.
do I break one?
Use your fingers and break a piece off.
But it's melting.
Okay, Ollie's going to give you a demonstration. So do the same thing as Ollie and then pop it back in the bag.
You're going to need to pop it in the bag fairly quick because it's melting very quickly. Oh,
Yeah, I'm ready to help that.
What do you reckon? Is it tasty?
Mm-hmm.
break that other piece there off, Sammy.
Look at all those lollies. Whoa.
Mm-hmm.
I think Xavier got a lot more lollies on him.
After that, it was onwards towards Sydney, where we got to experience the Sydney motorways for the first time, as well as some nice tight streets to pull the caravan through. We stayed at Cove, which is a really great place to base yourself for travelling around Sydney with a caravan. It's nice and close to the city centre, but also really close to the railway station. So we made the most of the trains and travelled around the city by public transport. Our first day in Sydney was spent travelling around the city centre. We wanted to try and tick off as many of the sites as we could, so it was a really big walking day for us. I think in total we did about 18,000 steps, and the boys were absolute troopers given the amount of ground that we covered. But first up, it was off to the Harbour Bridge, and we wanted to do the walk across the Harbour Bridge so we could see it in all of its glory. We'd also heard that there was a really good museum in one of the pillars of the bridge, so we wanted to get to experience that as well. The museum in the bridge is a paid experience. It was not the cheapest. I think it was about $80 for a family, but it was well worth the stop, and we learned a lot about the Harbour Bridge. We've been studying the Auckland Harbour Bridge as one of our projects for our homeschooling, and it was kind of cool because we had been hearing a little bit about the Sydney Build project in our book, so it kind of tied in quite nicely with what we've been doing at school. You actually walk up inside one of the pillars to access the museum. There's a little gift shop and museum in there. There's also a lookout where there's a fantastic view out over Sydney Harbour. Look at all those brave people climbing over the bridge, Paul. Once we'd finished looking around the Harbour Bridge Museum and checking out all the views from all the angles we could, we made our way over to the Rocks, which is one of the oldest parts of Sydney. There's some fabulous old architecture there, and there's also a really great museum about the history of the Rocks area and the people who inhabited the area. The museum is free to enter, And we did spend quite a bit of time looking around in there, although it was probably a bit more interesting for the adults than it was for the kids. And I think they were probably at the end of their tourist activities by that point, so we had to bail out and go in search of ice cream. The following morning, we went to check out the National Maritime Museum in Darling Harbour. We'd seen the ships in Darling Harbour the previous day, and while we hadn't planned to visit this while we were in Sydney, we're so glad that we did. We actually had thought we would probably only be there for a couple of hours, but in the end we spent nearly the entire day there. It opens at 10 and we got there just after opening, and I think we finished up at about 3:30 and we didn't see everything we could have. Exploring inside the big warship and the submarine was an absolute highlight for all of us. There was a lot of information for you to read as you looked around, but there were also volunteers to help answer your questions.
They're set on the sides here though. The casing's all set on the side.
Yeah, and then they went down.
The ammunition is manually taken from the hoist and put on the rails. From here, the shell is sent up to the turret above by the forward hoist and the cartridges by the aft hoist. Training or aiming and elevating the guns is ordered from the operations room based on information supplied by the various sections.
We've been so impressed at how well set up a lot of the museums are over here, and the awesome volunteers that they have at all of these places really help to make the experience. Where are we off to, Captain? I think this was probably one of the best value paid experiences we've done so far. We learned a little hack about museums in the east coast of Australia from a Facebook group, and it turns out that if you buy a pass to the Melbourne Museum, an annual pass, then you can get access to a number of other museums. And while this one wasn't free, we did get a bit of a discount as a Melbourne Museum member. So I think it was around $50 for us to attend as a family. Go and have a look. Go through. Show us.
Yep, this is engine room.
Wow.
We're out of fuel! Right? What needs fuel?
Look at that big engine, or multiple big engines. What is this? It looks like a little bit of a toolbox and things.
Resting area.
Wow.
No smoking.
Keep going. What's
Lower
that down
motor.
there?
It's a motor. Another
A motor?
This is... I'm not sure. Oh, this is a bit of...
No.
That looks like firefighter's mask. What they have in the things.
Yeah. Believe it or not, your entry to the Maritime Museum also gives you a harbour cruise. So we jumped on one of the historic boats that they had there at the Maritime Museum, and we got to go for a cruise out of Darling Harbour under the Harbour Bridge and then back around to explore some of the sites along the coast of Sydney Harbour. There were volunteer guides on the cruise as well, who were able to point out to us a number of the key sites around the harbour and give us some information about the history. It also gave us a great opportunity to grab some neat photos. So we got to go under the harbour bridge and get photos as we went under there. We also went quite close to the Opera House and were able to get some good photos as we went under there. I'm going to speed up the rest of the cruise so you don't have to watch the whole experience in real time, but just the cruise itself was probably worth the price of the museum entry. Once we finished our harbour cruise, we got to go and explore the third ship open for public viewing at the museum, which is the replica of James Cook's ship, the Endeavour. Aside from it being pretty cool to get to go and have a look inside what it would have been like to travel around in the Endeavour, I thought this was pretty cool because I got to see the ship when it was in Auckland in the 90s, so it was kind of cool getting to experience it again with the boys. Have a look. Oh, Mr. Green, it says. I wonder who Mr. Green was. We have to find out.
Maybe one of the captain. Maybe.
Like, oh, he must have been a real short dude, though.
Well, there's a big room back here.
What's this? This is Mr. Parkinson and Mr. Buchanan.
Buchan, is it?
Buchanan.
Aside from the ships that are outside, the museum also has a fabulous range of displays inside the building. We didn't get an awful lot of time to explore this as we had already spent so much time on the ships, but we did take some time to check out the fabulous James Cameron exhibit. This exhibit wasn't so much about the Titanic, but about the deep sea exploration work that James Cameron has done over the years, and it was truly fascinating to learn about. We finished up our time in Sydney by jumping on one of the ferries and heading out to Manly Beach. The ferries are another great way to see Sydney from the water, and of course we managed to get some great shots of the Sydney Opera House. Manly Beach is pretty close to the mouth of the Sydney Harbour, so it was quite a decent trip on the ferry and gave us the opportunity to get a look back at Sydney in the distance. It was also quite cool because as we approached the mouth of the Sydney Harbour, there were a whole bunch of boats gathered around, and when we had a bit of a closer look, we could see that there were whales jumping just off the end of the point at the mouth of the Sydney Harbour. So of course we didn't have the big camera again, so we didn't manage to get our breaching whales shots, but we did get the memories. We had planned to go for a swim at the famous Manly Beach, but it was pretty windy the day we were there and a little bit chilly to be honest, so we went and grabbed some ice creams and walked back over close to the ferry where there's a cute little beach with beautiful clear water, and the boys decided to jump in for a swim. So it's a nice short episode for us this week. We took a couple of days just to chill out and didn't take too much video footage this week. But in next week's episode, we'll be off to the beautiful Blue Mountains, so make sure you tune in to catch that one. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch our video this week. We hope you enjoyed it, and if you'd like to follow along with us on social media, then you can find us at Financial Freedom by 40 on Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok. We'd also love for you to follow the journey with us here on YouTube, so make sure you hit that subscribe button. We really appreciate your support, and we look forward to seeing you again next week.